Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we have something special, which I actually thoroughly enjoyed doing. It was a discussion with the Scottish Koala about the idea of a content creator council, the pros and cons with it, and all of that good stuff. Now, before we had this discussion, Koala went through one of my videos and basically discussed it and talked about the different points. I will make sure to leave a link in the description to that VOD if it is available, so you can have a look at that, and then also links in the description to all of the other videos which have been made on the topic by either myself or him, so you can get the broader context of the discussion. Anyway, I hope you enjoy watching this video. Make sure to check out the other ones so you can get involved in the overall conversation.
All right, let me turn that up a tad, and I think we're ready. So what do you reckon? I was really glad to be able to do this and actually respond to some of the points you brought up, because some of them really did change my point of view somewhat, or at the very least, I needed to go through some things that I didn't highlight properly in my original video. But one of the main things I talked about was that, from the sounds of it, your job is to go to companies who maybe don't have a certain perspective and present them, even though they're the ones who understand the inner workings of whatever they're doing, present them with their own product from an exterior view.
No. So when it comes to my job, I'm requested to come to look at systems to fix them or make them better. So a better way of describing it is, let's say you have a guy who's, I don't know, a business major, and he's created a company, and he has an idea for a product he wants to create, and he has a base idea of what he wants to make. He will come to me to go, does this work? What can I do to improve it? So okay. I'm an industry professional to give my comments, basically, and how to do it.
Okay, that makes more sense. That's where I got confused.
And at least from my point of view, like when comparing that to the council thing, I don't see the members of the council, whoever decided to be, as industry professionals in the in the part of game making.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah, unless they're actual university
people like
years of experience, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, he'd be good because he actually understands a lot of the ins and outs of coding, like the CDK and all.
Yeah, exactly.
People who work with that may be some of the only people who really understand both sides.
Yeah, so I did write a bunch of points down, and we can go through them. So the first thing, you keep saying like we. When it comes to we want to create this, we want to do this. Are you doing the royal we thing, or is there like a specific group of people that you're referring to?
Somewhat both. There's a few people who, people like Steelix Wolf, who came and we chatted for a little while about, what might be a better way of pushing something like this forward. But at the same time, it's a case of, like you said, it gives weight to an argument without necessarily talking about anyone in particular. Saying we, more a case of myself and the hypotheticals who may agree with that, who may make up any percentage of the community.
Right.
Without specifics.
Okay, so it's just to give weight to the argument, right?
Pretty much. It's the idea that, okay, there are a lot of people who clearly recognize that there are some issues. This may be a way of going about addressing some of them, potentially pushing forward some fixes to some of the issues that we tend to recognize, being myself and some people who also see the same issues. Like, for example, your video on BR changes being nonsensical, and some of them being very bad decisions that were made and shouldn't have gotten through. And hypothetical people who also see, the MiG-19s, the Sabres, MiG-15 base going down, the M48A2, the T-44 going down is a bad idea. And, those people who happen to align with that point of view. Because we're clearly talking here to the people who either agree with this or don't agree with it. So whilst I don't want to turn it into an us and them, because trying to turn this into an argument defeats the purpose of the discussion and kind of loses the discussion and what is important about the discussion. But
I also disagree with that, because it's not an us versus them. Like, because in every discussion when it comes to stuff, there's a lot of undecided people, right? and
no,
it's
yeah, of course.
just it's just trying to get them that perspective, like both sides. The next one, you had like this general theme while you were talking. You kept saying that Gaijin doesn't play their own game. You know, the devs or whoever works there. Every public facing figure that we know of, when it comes to Gaijin, all have accounts. They're all public. They're all level 100s with days, if not months,
people like
in the game.
Smen. I mean, there's a mod squad. There are people like Smen and Stoner who you see in game.
Yeah, but it's all of them. They all have these accounts.
Yeah. So the staff in charge of PR, basically. So the forum staff, the moderation staff,
and the game masters as well.
Yeah. So so people like what's an example? I've forgotten their names now.
People like Orson, Stoner, the Shaolin Monk as well. Weish is in there as well, who's another community manager. But
I remember these names from years back.
Well, some of them are on the CC Discord. But the So the thing I don't get. So how do you know they don't play their own game?
I don't. This is a case of an assumption that makes sense to assume in this case, but if is not true, then there's a whole different problem here, which is Gaijin perhaps pushing forward with changes that they may know don't make sense, like the MiG-19s going down, the Sabres and MiG-15 going down, the T-44, which ended up not going down, and because of the community outcry. But if it is a case of there are plenty of people on hand who understand everything about the balance in game and what can be done and what will be balanced and what will improve the experience of a player, then there's a whole different problem here, which is basically a case of a level of Gaijin not caring when they know something may be negative. So either that's the problem or the problem is a misunderstanding.
Yeah,
so I'm concerned about either, and if it's the other problem, then that is a completely different level of how the hell do we fix that. So maybe we should scrap this whole issue and talk about what could be done to better balance this game from Gaijin's perspective, so they don't need to force players to a matchmaker they struggle to grind through so much that they have to pay their way up and things like that without subtracting from Gaijin's bottom line. Maybe that's the discussion we should be having.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's a fair discussion. I remember back in the day, and I think you were part of the CC program, the Matej. Do you remember Matej? Matej?
Yes.
Yeah. So he actually said, it may have been a year or two ago, that in the War Thunder headquarters, they have like a board which shows how long people who have played, how many hours they put in the game.
Yeah.
So at least from that point of view, the only information I have when it comes to if they actually play their game is they do. So I find it very odd going off the assertion they don't. I think it's more of an issue of how personal experience is overridden by statistics in that regard, which,
Yeah. And I've talked about this a few times in this whole idea of statistics-based balancing, and plenty of other people have as well. And I've brought up the exact same point that, statistically, if you're looking at how effective a vehicle is as a base plate, you don't interpret why that might be. Why are, for example, the R3's statistics getting dragged down so hard? Well, it's because during an event, when there's a capture point task, everyone takes them, they rush, they don't try and get kills or support their team. They rush for a capture point, complete that task, no part of the game. Drag down the thing's success rate, drag down the thing's effectiveness or its efficiency. Why, for example, the store email, it looks like maybe it's not the most useful vehicle. We down tier it, it fights worse opponents, it must be better. But sometimes that may not be as simple as that. Sometimes there are more complex reasons why the statistics may not reflect the end result of how effective a vehicle is or where it should be balanced. The MiG-19 versus, for example, let's take 8.3. The F-Sabres and the MiG-15 bits now fight each other at 8.3.
No, I understand what you're saying. I don't need examples, but I do agree with you that the R3 fix is to put it at rank 2, so people stop using it, right? like that for those
Yeah.
events? Like if that's the problem area.
I think the problem is the event itself, including a capture point task, and not limiting what you can do it in. But that's just me. I would love to see Gaijin say, capture 15 points, but in a medium tank. You know, that might fix the issue, because then people actually have to play the game the way they normally would, and not artificially jump in their armored cars and rush straight for the thing.
Yeah, that's fair. One of the other things was the direct line of communication thing. So I want to get this straight so I can understand your perspective. So you talked about sitting down, with people yearly, discussing these things. Who exactly? Who do you want to chat to?
Look, game masters would be a fantastic way to start. At least there are some people that are higher up who I'd love the chance to talk to, but it's probably not going to happen, and perhaps shouldn't. But people who at least have the power to enact some change directly, because I can tell Smin on the CC Discord, and we can all see, the amount of people that cried out when the MiG-19 was announced to be going down, that hell, this is going to be bad. And we can communicate that to Smin, and he can communicate that to people higher up, and they can communicate that higher up. But it gets lost in, lose the forest for the trees. There's a chain of command that we go through that ends up not conveying just how important some of these might be. And it would be nice to have a limited time chance to cut through some of that, and at least more directly communicate with some people who can directly have an influence themselves and not have to pass it through the chain.
I'm pretty sure game masters deal with stuff like when people get reported in game. Do you mean more like head developer and like CCO and stuff like that?
Yeah, potentially. People like, I don't know what would be an example. I mean, Kirill BVVD would be a good example. Kirill was probably too high up to even try and reach with that. I don't know if he's fluent in English either, but
I don't think he is, because like whenever we get those dev Q&As, they're all from Vachislav, right?
Okay.
And those are questions from the community. So he's already kind of doing that. It's just more like selective questioning.
Yeah, and I believe you brought this up once before. This is not how the community worded the question.
Yeah.
But we did. I remember we did have a live stream once with one of the. I think it might have been Vyacheslav, who was saying, someone. I remember this question. Someone asked specifically. I believe the words were, when did you delude yourself into thinking that top tier premiums were a good idea? And he said, well, they're not top tier, they're rank 5. But, things like that, like...
yeah, it was
discussion was a fantastic...
It was a stream with Kirill Udintsev,
yes,
the CCO, and Sean. And it was in 2019, I think. But yeah, they just went,
screw
it, let's just answer the question.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
That was
nice to have
very
like
good.
That.
Yeah, I loved that they did that, but it was completely squandered because people said things like that. People got mad and tried to push forward some level of anger and almost like they were trying to intimidate Kirill into, you better change some of this shit or we're gonna, that was never going to work. But maybe if they tied that down to some of the more professional responses, some of the more mature and understanding, like I said, we need to think about this from Gaijin's perspective too. There's no point saying, make the stock grind super easy, and then all of a sudden nobody pays any GE for modules, nobody pays to grind up vehicles, and Gaijin can't maintain their servers, can't pay their workers, they got to lay off staff. They can't add more vehicles, the quality goes down, blah, blah, blah. You need to think about this from a company perspective as well as the experience of players. So there was no point getting just players who have, no incentive to meet Gaijin halfway. In that live stream, I think it was a fantastic, that is basically what I'm asking for, but without the random, give us playable aircraft carriers and naval forces, or when did you delude yourself into, stuff like that. It was never going to work.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. I have slight disagreements with that, but it's not a huge thing. Another thing you brought up quite a lot was the queue time stuff. Was this just like, your subjective take on it? How the queue time?
Well, that is Gaijin's very stock standard response to, it's become
I'll clarify. So you were talking about the recent VR changes. and
Oh yeah,
how they'd increase queue times.
yeah. They
Was
seem
that just
to
subjective, or?
that, and I mean, I have experienced that. I've had a few other people say the same thing on the Discord, basically saying, "Hey, I never used to wait 4 minutes for a game. As soon as they introduce these BR changes, same time of day, same vehicle, all of a sudden, I'm not getting games."
Yeah, that's fair.
Certain vehicles are being spammed out because the patch that introduced the changes, everyone said, "Oh, my MiG-19 is going to be easy mode now," and they spammed the thing out. And all of a sudden, your certain vehicles just weren't getting matches. So perhaps it is a very narrow view that doesn't take into account all the facts here and all the statistics. But from a personal perspective and the personal perspective of various others that I've seen, it seems as if, on average, some queue times have in fact gotten longer with the changes that compress BRs harder. Whether that's because people were chased away, whether that's because less people are playing because they're sick of bad balance, whether that's because of vehicles being spammed out, or whether that's purely subjective and it's not happening to everyone. I don't know. It's like I said, it's the survey problem. There's a survey that says, "Do you participate in surveys?" Of course, the answers are going to be mostly yes, because I mean, that much is obvious. But it certainly seems that way.
I don't think it was people chased away, because at least earlier today there was 100,000 people online.
Wow,
and that's been pretty standard for like a few weeks now. It's been pretty good.
Yeah, I can't remember hitting that averagely since COVID first kicked off, and we had like 127,000 online or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
About the highest number of players ever. We even got a decal in game for it.
Yeah, that's true.
And then the servers died because they couldn't keep up.
When I mentioned changes every week, what I was referencing in the video, because you said you were confused or not sure what I was talking about. So pretty much what I'm talking about is change logs, economy, BR changes, updates. There's so much information that
there's
changes.
Always something happening.
Yeah, and because of that, even if you've played a vehicle, let's say a month or two ago, how can you use that opinion about it in a discussion about it?
Yeah, you have to kind of understand how things may have changed for that vehicle. Things like meta changes can take a few months to kind of kick in, but when there's always, maybe you played that vehicle for 20 hours a day for a week, but you played it during an event, so all of a sudden that's going to skew your experience in it, or you played it when it was first added, and there's no point making an objective opinion on a vehicle when it's a brand new thing and everyone's new to it. And yeah, there is always something happening in the game. I wanted to bring this up a while back, and I basically was going to suggest maybe Gaijin should just be doing fewer updates and fewer things all the time. Bug fix patches, fantastic. Always fix something. Hopefully they don't break something else, but it's fantastic to have these updates, little ones, constantly coming in that update something very small, fix bugs, introduce new textures, all of that kind of thing. But things like, every time an event finishes, we have an update. And then every time the update's finish, then we finally start to settle in and, there's another event, or, there's a bug fix patch, or, something was implemented that changes something for some vehicle that then makes more or less players play it, that then changes the experience of the vehicles around it. And it's too complex. So maybe Gaijin is just biting off more than they can chew and introducing too many things too rapidly.
I think if they decide to lower the amount of stuff that they add, that kills the game. But that's a danger. The main problem is because you've agreed with me on this. How would we, we would have to play all of these vehicles pretty much straight away, all like that week all the time, which we can't do. It's
just go in. You want to give an opinion on any vehicle, you gotta play 9 hours in the last 3 days first.
Yeah, but you can't just play that vehicle. You have to play every vehicle around it.
Against it.
So what happens is
line up against it.
Yeah. So what happens is how can you ever sit on that person's opinion when it's already shifted? Because of a week going by.
I think in general that's a problem you can't sidestep around, and so like you said, there's next to no fix to that. If Gaijin tries to stop doing so many things in the game, then they start throwing away players because they're not getting something constantly, fed to them. New squadron vehicles, new events, new updates, everything. Perhaps this idea that events should take place in a different game mode or something like that, but then you split up the players, then you lengthen match queues, and you even change. You still change the gameplay around where that vehicle sits because all of a sudden it's missing from regular RB matches or whatever. So I don't see a way. Excuse me. I don't see a way around this problem, and so maybe it just needs to kind of be dealt with case by case as best it can. So, if someone wants to give an opinion on a particular vehicle's balance, maybe it is just a case of, have you played it in the last 5 days? No, maybe we should, look for some more information before we change anything. And this is why, for example, Spitfire brought this up. Maybe there should be a separate server, like a dev server, but constantly running for certain people to jump in. I just test things in a more isolated environment, but even then, you create problems. So I don't see a way around that. And it's a very significant problem that you bring up. It's a very worthy point, and I don't know if there is a way around it. So maybe
the way around it is the industry standard, which is using statistics instead of opinion, and that's how they do it. So.
Yeah, in general, it is fine. Balancing by statistics is, as a regular point, is absolutely fine. It's only those case-by-case vehicles where maybe the statistics don't show you the whole story, like the R3, like the Type 75 SPH I mentioned in the
When did you last play the Type 75 SPH?
Yesterday.
And you've played like 26 games in it, right?
I played it somewhere around there. Not a whole lot. Certainly not a whole lot. I like the thing, but I haven't played it much.
Would you be comfortable talking about a vehicle that you've played that less games in?
Oh no, I'm not saying that I have the be all and end all on that vehicle or anything. I don't think a whole lot of people have played that many games in the Type 75, especially not recently. When it was new, maybe. But it's not a common vehicle to see in games, and it's there's a reason for that, but playing a few matches in it, it certainly seems to be one of those vehicles. Not that, I've played a ton of it or anything like that, but it seems like one of those vehicles where sometimes down tiering it doesn't fix the problem. And it's not like it's the isolated example. But purely looking at it without playing it is a very flawed way of looking at it. I completely agree with that. Someone was talking recently about, I gave an opinion on the Stritzfarn 122, and they were saying, oh, you haven't played it since the dev server. What do you know? But I said, okay, ordinarily I'd be against that. Stritzfarm 122 is just a slight modification of the Leopard 2A5, and I've played that, so close enough, even if it's not perfect. And it certainly is the same for the Type 75. I do not have enough matches in that thing to give an objective viewpoint on it at all. But I'm dealing with what I've got and just making a thing, putting a statement out there. Anyone can feel free to support it, reject it, provide some evidence, keep the discussion going outside of my participation.
Yeah, fair.
I think that's what I want a council. That would be what I would want from a council. Someone brings up a basic point, we workshop it, we tear it apart and pick apart all the issues that might exist with it, maybe revise it, maybe completely change what was initially proposed, but then get something eventually pushed forward with as much information as possible from as many people as can put forth a good suggestion for it.
Yeah, I think
just revision.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As I said, though, I think it goes counter to the, you'd have to play it recently, and you would also have to, get a lot of people to play it a lot. Or what you can do is you can have a look at the total statistics of the player base playing it at that time, and then make a decision, which is what they do.
Yeah,
which is why it's better to do it that way.
It is, and like I said, in general, it doesn't create many problems. Most vehicles in the game are balanced. There's only a few problem makers, things like when the Lightning first went down to 9.7. It sucked fighting top-tier matchmaker. At 9.7, it ended up becoming horrifically overpowered. In that particular regard, maybe the statistics were not all that should have been used, but most of the time, they're perfectly fine. So I guess the only way to do it in that regard, if you're going to try and keep the statistics-based balancing system and use something else when it is necessary and only when it is necessary,
if it was
trying to create a whole new system.
If it was overpowered, why didn't it go back up in BR?
Because different things got down tiered to its BR. like
Not very recent, only until
the
recently.
MiG-21 F13. Recently, we downed here the MiG-19s, the J7, the PFM.
How long ago was the Lightning down beyond? It was like 6 months, right?
Yeah, it was about that. It
Yeah.
was. I remember doing a video on it when it first got down tiered, and it was quite a while ago.
So there was a
But, you know, what
BR
about
change,
the
two BR
SU7?
changes between them.
The SU7 at 9.7, and everyone talked about how this is ridiculous. It shouldn't be here. It went up to 10.0. Oh, look, it went back down again, and then it went down a second time. So it's now, even though it got up beyond initially, it's now lower than it was in the first place. And the only thing that addresses that problem is that there are more Mark IIs at 9.7 now, like the PFM, like the Jaguar Mark II, but you know what I mean? Like that kind of general capability of vehicle, which used to be 10.0, is now 9.7 across the board. And perhaps that, you know, people on the CC Discord saying vehemently and providing some evidence and making plenty of videos about why, you know, these supersonics, these Mark IIs, these very high capability fighters at 9.7 isn't a good thing. I mean, I remember talking about the J32B and G91Y, saying maybe these things at least should go down to 9.7 months ago. Lo and behold, they did. But there were plenty of people, very experienced jet players, saying no, maybe they're not nearly as good as MiG-19s, but they are too good to fight Sabres and FJ4s and Venoms.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately I don't... sorry. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with that stuff, so I can't really comment.
Yeah. One of the things with statistics not showing you the whole story is I talked recently about top-tier jets and this idea of missile combat in top-tier jets, where these jets don't just have missiles available to them, but it's their primary weapon. They seem balanced against each other because they're both kind of broken on both sides, and they both experience issues that you can't see just by looking at efficiency. You know, it maybe doesn't show you some of the issues that are larger scale than that. You know, things like top tier compression is a difficult one to see by statistics because you've got two arguably balanced opponents fighting each other. Whether they're also fighting lower BR opponents they shouldn't be, they're still countered by each other.
I
That's
think you
balanced.
I think you have a very weird understanding of these statistics. They have statistics on everything, right? It seems like you're looking from it from a single point of view. They will have statistics on how well a Phantom does against a MiG-21 BIS, but they'll also have all of the other ones on how it's doing against everything else in that BR bracket. And that's what they're going to base stuff on. So if they're not seeing that it's, let's say, not doing too well against a MiG-21 BIS, for example, but it's annihilating everything else, they know that through the statistics.
Yeah, I mean that's...
There was a thing that I watched. It was like a presentation from a wargaming guy who was head of analytics or something, or head of marketing or something like that in America for them. And he went through how much information wargaming actually has about their players, not just about the game balance point of view, but also from a marketing point of view. Per day, they get 5 terabytes worth of data just from that one region, which they process and go through and have all of these automated systems to go through it. I would be
commonality and everything.
I would be incredibly surprised if Gaijin doesn't have a similar system.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that they do. But for example, although it was disagreed with many times, I talked about how top tier jets with these longer range weapons maybe need longer range to with which to use them, so that the relationship between a prop engaging another prop and how much room that takes up on a map and a top tier jet, an F4E engaging a MiG-21 BIS, take up roughly the same percentage of the map. That in and of itself being changed may vastly change what the statistics show. And you can bet that it wouldn't be addressed for a good few months. And during that time, there would be a lot of issues that then maybe get so convoluted because new updates come out and produce something more into the mix. There's It's like you said earlier, perhaps Gaijin, there are too many things happening too quickly to ever give an objective viewpoint on a vehicle, even a week or two later. If you haven't played it and the BR bracket around it and its opponents, its teammates, and a lot of that vehicle specifically within the last week, your even, very, very experienced viewpoint on it may be somewhat outdated very, very quickly. And it's, perhaps some changes create issues that won't be seen for a good few months down the track.
Yeah,
like
maybe.
I would be all for trusting Gaijin to get things right, but when you see evidence of problems, like you said, BR changes are absurd in that video, and the sabers and the MiG-15s going down. It's clear that Gaijin is okay with a certain number of problems that the players are not okay with, and these aren't stock grind easier parts in FPE, free Abrams, and things like that. These are real problems that objectively negatively impact the game itself as well as just players' experience. So it seems to me like Gaijin needs some help. Gaijin needs some inside perspective, even if it's not perfect, to just kind of push more the idea that perhaps some of their BR changes are not the right move. Perhaps some of I've made plenty of videos suggesting new mechanics to the game, and most of the time they are just, hey, wouldn't this be cool, rather than something that is needed. But when it comes to BR balancing and when it comes to decompression, this is very not subjective. This is a very observable problem, and I think it seems as if Gaijin needs some help with it. And that's just what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it might be an observable problem, but you may not be looking at the right problem. Because, as I said in that video, you change one thing and that creates a catalyst, and then it breaks 5 other things. And that's that's the constant seesaw you got to live on. One thing you brought up there is about the large map stuff, and this actually ties into another topic that I want to get into. So if I'm on a large map, because you talked about ground and air, so we'll just focus on ground because I actually have experience in top tier that. How do I do anything in a stock vehicle in a large map?
Yeah, that's another problem. I think it would probably make you less likely to be set on fire, if that's a consolation, but it also makes much more of a problem the fact that you don't have thermals, the fact that you only have heat FS, and I think we can go in circles about map design as a whole for 5 hours and not get anywhere, because that is very subjective. But I think the problem there may just be what equipment is available to a stock vehicle. Before night vision became a thing, before thermals became a thing, it was much less of an issue. Thermals brought about a big old buff to vehicles like the Challenger 1. All of a sudden, it wasn't, nearly so stomped on in the hands of an average player as it was before, but it gives something else that a stock vehicle has to do without, and the problems that arise from not having it. So, maybe the core issue here, these smaller maps, these 950 meter wide maps, some of them, like there's a version of Ardennes or Wallonia, or one of those maps, which is 950 meters across from just straight left to right, is necessary just to give some of these vehicles a chance to rush around when they're stock and lob heat rounds into the side of someone, instead of trying to combat someone head on, when they would need APFSDS and thermal optics and all of these equipment modules with which to do that, and they don't have them stock. It seems like as time's progressed, as the game has given us more and more complexities to the vehicles, which aren't a negative thing, certainly not objectively at least, but it does create more that a stock vehicle doesn't have.
Yeah,
it just outclasses them further.
Yeah, I always go against gameplay implementation that makes the stock grind worse, because you said in the stream that at least for you, you don't regard the stock to grinded grind as something that should be even, thought of when talking about balancing vehicles.
Oh no, I don't mean so much that. I mean, if you want to decide on a BR of a vehicle, you have to assume that it's spaded when it's being decided. Because looking at half the capabilities of a vehicle and trying to balance it against spaded opponents is not ever going to go well. That would basically say that every new vehicle should be a lower BR than a competitor that came to the game 2 years ago, because recently most people are going to be playing spaded versions of that one and stock versions of the new one. So maybe whilst it needs to be looked at, the stock grind being made harder is not a good thing. I talked in a recent video about how stock missiles on 3rd generation jets needs to be a thing. We need to, we can't expect, let's say, in 3 patches time, let's say, even if it's not the case, we get a MiG-23. The thing is going to be as maneuverable, like it's going to make an F-104 look nimble, and it's going to be expected to stock grind with a gun that is barely competitive on a MiG-21, let alone a MiG-23.
Yeah,
and that's, that problem as a whole.
My point with this is, since, as you said, you disregard the stock to spaded grind as a thing we need to balance vehicles on when they're fully spaded, the majority of people who play the game don't play with spaded configuration vehicles if they're playing normal tech tree vehicles.
Yeah, that's true.
And as a person who on stream and has never spent GE on researching anything in the game, like when it comes to modifications or anything like that, I feel like you are going in with a perspective which is already going to doom a ton of people, and therefore not representing anybody when it comes to the like your discussions you have about BRs.
Yeah, the general experience of another player.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. My experience is colored by that completely. But I would call the stock grind a separate issue that can be fixed separately, and possibly even fixed before anything else. There is merit to saying, hey, whilst maybe you don't balance a MiG-19 based on the fact that when it's stock, it's perfectly fine fighting FJ4s. When it's spaded, it's not. But if not everyone's playing it like that, the statistics are going to show that. And how about certain top tier tanks? They take ages to grind out their modules. One hit to the engine, and a lot of them are going to be dead. But you don't go into a match thinking, oh, I'll hit everyone in the engine, and we'll see how many people how many kills we can rack up doing that. You assume everyone's going to be spaded fighting you.
You're looking
at
it
from not, there's some evidence.
You're looking at it from the wrong way around. So instead of, you are correct that you do look at everybody as spaded, but when you play a vehicle which is stock or which is partially spaded or spaded, you play them completely differently from each other because you have different capabilities. So the fact that you don't have that because you've never done that, and a lot of CCs also haven't done that, how can you ever believe that you can represent people's opinions correctly when you don't have that experience?
Oh, you can. On the stock grind issue, CCs aren't, you certainly aren't mostly an authority on that at all, because we do get that kind of a little bit of special treatment in that regard. And we can, if we want to, blow all of our GE on grinding modules and paying for spaded vehicles. One thing I only found out recently, Gaijin gives me a test drive in, say, the Leopard 2A5 when that's first released. It lasts for 30 days. I don't have the, 1A5. After 30 days, I re-grind it back out, and boom, it comes spaded because I had it spaded before. I thought, oh, that's a pleasant surprise. But I don't have the experience to talk about what the stock grind is like from an average player unless I do decide to, go and, okay, this vehicle, we're going to stock grind like anyone else does. And I have done that with plenty of vehicles recently. I mean, vehicles I haven't made videos on. Maybe it's because I haven't finished, stock grinding them yet, and I haven't enjoyed them as much. I haven't done as well in them, and blah 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 blah. But yeah, no, there are issues like that CCs just do not have an experience on.
Well,
that can be treated as authoritative.
Apart from me.
Oh yeah, no. If you're going through saying, hey, let's see what the average player sees. I know Orange Fan used to do his stock 10 videos, where he would take a vehicle, stock grind it, and show what is the stock grind like. But when it comes to, say, balancing vehicles, I think the stock grind is a separate issue, and there are fixes that need to come. There are certain affordabilities that need to be given to a vehicle stock, certain equipment. I know people have talked in naval forces, people who aren't me, who don't have my experience, or at least they have a much better experience than I do. I've talked about in naval, you can't expect them to fight effectively without FPE, because it's so much worse than in a tank. You're going to get set on fire, and you don't have the ability to do, piss all about it. You might as well be pissing in the wind. And you have to just suffer through a certain amount of matches like that without being able to fight the way you would when you're spaded. And someone who doesn't have that experience doesn't have to go through that. So yeah, no, it's definitely not an experience you should be considered on.
What experiences do you believe you have that tie into the average player's experience as well?
Look, when it comes to playing, I guess, where as a content creator who can use, if you don't, but a lot do, use their GE to grab vehicles in a lineup, not have to worry about playing a single 6.7 without a lineup to back it up, because they can just get those vehicles and then they can just spade them very easily. And I guess those content creators who do that are what the average player is trying to get to, and eventually what they plan to be at. Nobody plans to stick with their stock vehicle forever. Everyone who wants to play a specific vehicle wants to play it spaded, and will spade it eventually. It's never just not in the cards to spade a vehicle, even at high tiers. And I think as far as the average player, their ideal endpoint is where the content creators kick off. That's how they start playing a certain vehicle. They jump into a spaded vehicle with a lineup to back it up that is all spaded as well, and end up having the experience that everyone else is trying to get to. So right. To a degree, it's an ideological point of view. We are the end goal for most players.
Right. So basically the end goal.
Yeah. I mean, a player who's been playing for long enough will eventually spade their vehicles, will have the same experience that we do. We just have that experience from the beginning. And obviously, like you said, not yourself as well. If you are stock grinding all your vehicles and actually grinding out the RP and SL for them, and then grinding out their modules and having the same experience that a lot of players do. Most of us don't have that, at least for many of the vehicles we play. And it does call your experience, but I think it's a point where maybe that is one particular issue in which a CC council just doesn't get an opinion.
Okay, so
they need to speak to different people.
What should it get an opinion on? What do you feel like you yourself are an authority figure on, which represents the average player?
Oh, nothing. This is why I talk about a committee getting together to mete out some decisions based on their collective experience and debate with each other and throw ideas back and forth about maybe what doesn't need changing and what does. What's the root issue of this cause? How is my experience lacking where someone else can fill in the holes? It's like a puzzle piece. It's like a puzzle where we all have 10 pieces. We can eventually fill in an objective point of view on a vehicle with our collective experience, but none of us individually have an ability to put that objective view forward straight away. It needs to be committed out. And that's why I think that, there are some problems with the way we go about giving feedback currently, because it's not debated back and forth before being proposed. And, I think a council could at least begin to fix some of that by having very differing representatives who maybe disagree with each other, and then Gaijin reps on the other side who then disagree again. And then we then committee out and put some of those puzzle pieces down until eventually we have an objective mindset. Which then is only from the point of view of someone who doesn't have to stock grind and doesn't have to worry about that anyway. So it's still not not the whole puzzle.
As you've said in the past, what you would like this committee, let's call it, to be the people you'd want in this committee are people who make War Thunder content for a living. You said that in a previous video. Do you still agree with that?
I say career level content creators.
Right, okay. So can you name a single career level, as you put it, content creator who has that experience, who you could actually go off?
No, and besides, perhaps Fly, but basically when I say career level,
his vehicles.
Oh no, of course not. But when it comes to career, I mean, I say that as a wash out the whole issue of, hey, what about someone with 1,000 subs who is in the content partnership program? Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't be listened to. But let's throw out that whole idea of career level content creators, because there just aren't enough of them. And certainly the ones that do exist do not cover the whole average experience.
Do you think there is enough CCs that could give that experience a reasonable, be able to iron it out and make it better? Since
yes,
you do. Okay, fair enough.
Yes, I do. People like, for example, Defin, not a career level CC. People like Whoopty, not career level at all. People like Steelix Wolf, people who don't. People who aren't career level maybe aren't even trying to make it career level. Spookston, Spitfire, all of it. You've got your own, mainline form of income. Your main job. Is YouTube just a hobby for you? Is it something you want to? Yeah. Okay. So people who aren't career level. For me, it's always been the idea that it would be my main form of income, and so I might have been a crazy idea, but I did it.
Yeah, that's just. I mean, for me, that's just a mindset thing, so it doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Because
no, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So this idea, one thing I said in the original in the stream earlier is that this idea of getting content creators because the content creators have something to lose, because we are tied to this game more than a regular player. Because if this game goes down, if we try and quit, then perhaps our content goes down.
Yeah, you'll have to.
And I know you will have a similar experience where when you upload a video on a game that isn't War Thunder, it gets a lower viewership. On average, it has different analytics, but perhaps for someone like me, I couldn't quit War Thunder and expect to make a living. My channel wouldn't work. Whereas a regular player doesn't have anything to lose besides, oh, that's a shame. I don't want to play War Thunder anymore. But the ideal way of doing this would not be to use content. The ideal way would be to have staff on payroll who do exactly what the balance team in R6 Siege do. That do that are contracted to simply play the game and understand the balance of the game. And then you create a whole nother series of problems like how experienced are they? How many hours do they play? Blah, blah, blah. But that would be a much better way than doing it with content creators. This is just a case of, well, Gaijin doesn't have to pay us. We can do it for them. We already have something, some vested interest in the game. But I would certainly like to see them as, staff on payroll who are just contracted to do exactly that.
Yeah, moving on, I agree with you. It would be nice if that exists. And to be honest, I don't think either you or me know if that exists or not right now.
No, it very well might. I mean, it certainly doesn't seem like it does. Spit, for example, has said, very much doesn't seem like it does, and it would be fantastic if it did. And until then, someone in my chat just pointed out there are a lot of CCs who are very small. Wingling Dragon is someone who has basically adopted Air Sim as his thing, and until recently was a very small creator only on Twitch. But there are plenty more. But this idea that CCs aren't the best way of handling this, but it may be the most likely alternative because Gaijin doesn't have to pay us to do that job, because they're effectively already paying us an in-game loot, and our careers are tied to this game anyway, or at least anyone who cares enough about their channel to be tied into War Thunder and not have that ability to just say, okay, from tomorrow, not playing anymore. I'm sick of it. Because I couldn't do that. And I'm betting many other content creators just couldn't do it.
Right. So a CC council would be a bad idea then?
Look, I'm certainly less for it. It was a very rose-colored glasses mindset. I will say that immediately. It would work perfectly, and it wouldn't. It definitely wouldn't. This is, perhaps just not the best way of dealing with it, but the best way that's ever likely to go ahead. Because, like I was bring up the Wargaming example. World of Warships had these community contributor summits yearly, and it was a godsend for those games because people like Flamu and Zoop and Flambas could talk directly with development staff and actually convey directly to them why certain things were good, certain things were bad, certain things were imbalanced, blah, blah, blah. When those community contributor summits stopped happening or stopped being listened to so much, all of a sudden you end up with certain problems in those games that those summits would have prevented putting into effect. But
how do you know those summits would have prevented those issues?
Just getting that from people like Flamu. People who say, well, we spoke vehemently against this, but we just didn't have the voice anymore.
Did they stop stuff in the past from happening because of these summits?
I am not sure. Just based on what they've said, yes, but
fair enough.
The ins and outs we don't know because it's under NDA.
Yeah, which is another problem, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. One of the things I was like, this particular point in the video, spot on. I could not agree with this harder. Like, yes, NDAs are a completely separate problem to this whole idea of a council. It is irrelevant what how many problems we fix if we're still under NDA.
Have you ever signed an NDA?
Yes, only one ever, but. Yeah, just as part of my job before YouTube was ever at a career level.
There's not really a
lot of wiggle room.
Of a soft NDA, which was something you brought up.
Something that I said, if it could be done where, okay, let's just say, for example, Gaijin says to us, yes, decompression to 11.7 is coming in December with these jets. And they say, okay, you can say that decompression is coming, but you're not allowed to say the jets are coming. And, that idea of a soft NDA, as you put it, and, perhaps it could exist. I said, similarly on the stream, I think Gaijin is too close-knitted to hold a relationship with their audience. People like Heatblur and Eagle Dynamics who run DCS and create the models for them will talk 2 years in advance about what they're working on. But Gaijin keeps everything very close to the vest until the last possible second. And there are plenty of reasons for that. They don't want to make promises that they end up not keeping, and it pisses people off. They don't want to, subject themselves to needing to say, oh, we were wrong, we don't have this ready in time. But I truly think if they stop making the promises and just say, hey, we're working on the F8 Crusader, and they give a little, give a few images. What's the 3D model look like right now? Do you have the wings done? Do you have a little GIF animation of the wing, variable sweep wing going up and down? And give a little paragraph from the guys who are in charge of modeling it saying, oh, one of the things we wanted to prioritize when looking at this aircraft, blah, blah, blah. Talk about the history. Basically make it a dev blog just 8 months in advance. And then say, we're excited for this to be added to the game soon.
You know they have done stuff like that in the past, right?
They have done a couple of times. And then there's things like leaks. Then there's things like you just taking... when they talked about the Mirage before that was added, and we knew it was coming because they said, hey, the only thing that's preventing it being added right now, it's not ready because of the tailless Delta design. And
well, how about the fact that in the last Dev Q&A they talked about the German Phantom was coming? Right?
Oh, yeah, that too. Yeah.
What about the interview in December 2019 where they talked about their plans for the year? Like they do these things you're asking for. They already
do, yeah, to a degree. I'm more thinking about this as
they're even doing the teaser trailers like that. That's amazing, right?
That came out much earlier than I was expecting it to.
Yeah, so they're already doing these things.
Yeah, maybe this is already heading in the right direction, and just kind of remembering what it used to be like in times where maybe it was more of an issue than it is today, and it doesn't need addressing right now because it is already heading in the right direction. But yeah, I would like to see Gaijin, do a little dev blog saying, let's just assume for a second that the F8 Crusader has been in development for the last 4 months and is going to be added to the game in another 4 months or something. I'd love to see Gaijin say, hey, it's being worked on. Here's a picture of the gray, like 3D model that's only just ready. We're working on certain weapon systems, blah, blah, blah. Stay tuned. It'll be added soon. Like, I'd love to see that. I think that would be great. And I think that would really improve relations between Gaijin and their community. And I honestly don't think there's any harm to it so long as you're not making promises.
The harm to it is that one of the marketing tools that you have as a company is surprise and also waiting and hype, right? So by doing what you're saying, you're new to that, and that doesn't exist anymore.
See, I don't think it does in certain regards, where maybe letting us know that it is coming would actually, people are still going to get hyped for the F8 Crusader and so, like, oh, that's going to be lovely. They just get hyped early. And maybe if Gaijin says, let's say in the next update, I mean, maybe when the F3H Demon was added and they say, oh, the F8 Crusader's being worked on, blah, blah, blah. If it happened to go that way.
We've already
in the meantime, enjoy the F3H Demon,
We've already agreed they're already doing that. Like as I said, with like the article they had from the interview from December 2019, where it outlined what they were doing for that whole year, and then the Mirage stuff, and then the teaser trailers, they're already doing what you're asking for.
Yeah, to a degree they certainly are. Maybe it just doesn't need any more. I know. I'm certainly not at any point saying that, my view is it, but just putting something out there and saying, hey, maybe this would be a good thing to do more. Hype people up early more so than they do already. Give us some actual pictures of 3D models that aren't done yet, but then you run into other problems. But provided it doesn't subtract from players wanting the thing, I don't see a problem in Gaijin saying, hey, more often, like you said, they do it with the German F4F, the Mirage. We knew that was coming long before we got a dev block for it. Even if it wasn't an assumption anymore, like we could assume 3 months in advance that, yeah, of course the Mirage is coming, it has to. But then it was confirmed, like, yes, it is coming. It's just been difficult to develop. It will be here soon as we got it ready, and then it did come. That was one aircraft. I'd love to have known that the Stridsfarm 103 was going to be in the game long before we actually got any confirmation. I'd love to have known, some things that were coming. I think maybe it would have convinced people to stay around when they knew that it is coming, and it's not just to assume anymore. People are bringing up in my chat that a US Navy F4 Phantom. Look, we've already been hyped up about the Phantom twice. Now we're getting hyped up about the German Phantom. If they just said, hey, F4J is going to come in too. Here's a little image. Blah, blah, blah. Should make it into the game in the next 2 or 3 patches. Get pumped. But, I'd love to see Gaijin do it more. Like you said, they are doing it. I'd love to see Gaijin do it more with certain vehicles. Obviously, the Rank 7 aviation is to come. They're going to want to keep that under wraps until the last second when they can go, boom, surprise, get hyped. But, maybe with certain vehicles, I don't know, the PL, what's the new Chinese one? Let me have a quick look. It's the PTL something or other. But things like that. Yeah, people have been PTL02. I thought that was it. People have been annoyed at the Chinese tech tree for months because, for a year now, it's had minimal that is actually uniquely Chinese. Even something like the CW21 and the P66 are both American aircraft that America just happens to not have. 90% of the tree is borrowed tech, which is okay to a degree.
I know what you're going to say. And on the forums, they've been talking constantly about how there's going to be more Chinese top-tier vehicles,
will be more,
and they're working on them. So they're already doing what you're saying.
Yeah.
Let's move on from this. You brought up Defin, right? Now, Defin is probably one of the best pilots in the game.
For sure.
He's really good. Why would you want a person like Defin balancing vehicles when the average player is not going to be able to do what he does? So therefore, they won't be able to replicate the same experiences.
I think the thing is here that Defin will be better than the average player across the board. Not, there are a lot of things that Defin will be able to do that an average player won't. Maybe that completely changes the way he plays a vehicle. Most people play the Focke, will want to play Focke-Wulf 190s by going up to altitude, boom, and zooming, just like a P-47 does. Someone like Defin can take it into a dogfight with a Spitfire and win. And it will change how he plays the vehicle and perhaps how he balances it. But he's also an expert in the field. And that would be why I'd want to trust him with being able to say, okay, what can an average player do? What can't an average player do that I can? And how do I need to change my opinion based on that? Or what I propose based on that? Perhaps he will be able to say, okay, for me, this will still be powerful in this regard, whereas the average player can do this much with it. Therefore, it belongs here. You get experts in the field to judge this stuff, even if it's not average.
No, you get statistics to show you the actual truth of how people are playing the vehicles. Because if you base it off expert opinion, you're going to get a bunch of vehicles which are really wonky BRs because they do really well in very specific scenarios.
Yeah, but we already have a bunch of vehicles at very wonky BRs. I think
if we're at least a lot more wonky, just trust me on this. I've heard
See,
some
I'm not
ridiculous
entirely
suggestions.
sure I agree with that, because I think
Fair
when you
enough.
have a player who knows what the average pilot is capable of, and not, necessarily just what he is capable of, that person can propose a BR for all vehicles across the board, not just the ones that he does particularly well in, but also understand, how does the average player's experience differ to mine, and how much does that need to be taken into account?
All
And
right,
therefore,
just give
I mean,
me.
like I said,
I
statistics
can.
balance is fine
I can
overall.
hear my dog doing dumb stuff, so just give me a minute.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll be right back. I
No,
apologize.
for sure.
Right, just give me 2 seconds, guys.
You guys in chat, what would you like me to ask Tech? What would you like me to say to Tech? Please present something. I can take it to him. The BR should be given in a way that considers the maximum potential of the vehicle. See, that would be something I would agree with. What is his solution? How would he do it? Well, I think he would just do statistics-based balancing across the board. He's definitely example. He's extremely objective in his opinion of BRs. I bounce shit back and forth multiple times to get feedback, and he's always of the opinion to make a plane suffer a bit in an entire battering range. So I've asked the chat what are a couple of things that they'd like me to ask you.
Sure.
One thing someone suggested was that the vehicle, if a vehicle is to be balanced, you have to consider what the experts are capable of in it, as well as what an average player is capable of in it. You can't have a vehicle at a BR where 20 or 30 players are able to completely ruffle stomp in it more than anyone else could, and then call it balanced, because the average player can't do that. And I was gonna talk to Spitfire about this recently, and I think some of the reason for that is just because there's too big of a skill gap.
Before you go on, what's the actual question?
So how would you suggest that a vehicle, who would you use as the template to balance a vehicle?
I would use the whole base of statistics of the people who are playing the vehicle.
Including the outliers?
Yes.
So people like Devon?
Yes. Because there will be outliers on that end, and there will be outliers on the other end.
On the other end, yeah.
So I would do exactly what they do right now.
Just, yeah, okay. And that was basically what I said. I think that does work primarily. I think 90% of the time, there's no issue with that. Using the statistics, using the overall effectiveness of a vehicle in the hands of everyone who plays it. But you do run into problems just looking at that without interpreting it in the ways that, okay, when a new nation gets added, you're going to have two main groups of people playing it. A, the people who bought $300 worth of Golden Eagles and grinded their way to the Type 99 on day one. Or let's say the Type 96, when the Chinese tech tree was still relatively new, and we got the Type 96. You're going to have people who whale their way up there, as people say. You're also going to have the experts who can grind out a tech tree in a couple of weeks. And, whereas it might take some people 3 years to reach rank 7 with a single main nation, there are a bunch of people who do it in 6 months and are looking for a new tech tree to grind. So it's going to be those people who are the better players who play a new nation more. And you're going to get skewed statistics from that.
Yeah, and they know this. And you know how I know this, because the Wargaming creative director did an interview with Circon where he talked about how it takes approximately 6 months to actually balance a new vehicle. So they already know this, right? These companies already know this.
Well, then why did within that amount of time, Gaijin, up BR the SU7, then down BR the SU7, then down BR it again?
Because as you said earlier, we also had other changes, such as the max BR going from 10.3 to 10.7.
Hello there.
Yeah, I wouldn't see that as a reason why the SU7 should go down, though.
Well,
I think it went up because it was ruining games that it was fighting, because it could literally just run around the entire game. That hasn't changed. Even against a MiG-19, it can still run around the entire game, and no one will catch it. Even against a Lightning with lower energy retention, it can still create that problem.
I haven't played.
And now we've got it in 9.3. It's even worse.
I haven't played the SU7. I'm just saying there are other factors going on, not just a single BR change.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, that's it.
Someone asked me to ask you, how many people do you know, or would you suggest in your community are arcade players?
I have a few admins and mods who are arcade players.
Yeah, see, I have the same. One of my moderators is an arcade main.
But
Beyond that,
I never speak on behalf of arcade players.
no. Yeah, and the same
I
goes for
ask
me.
them to make videos on topics that they want to do, and they do so. So yeah, I have no idea. I play Naval Arcade, but I don't
Yeah.
play Air or Ground Arcade, so I don't know.
No, honestly, I stick to RB. I've probably got 10 people on a Discord of 2,500 that actually main arcade. So I can't speak on their behalf as well. Some said earlier that perhaps a lot of the counter arguments to certain issues are specifically coming from the arcade community, because there is a big old wall between what the RB community experiences and what the arcade community experiences, and perhaps that creates some big differences in the discussion.
Yeah, because the game modes are completely different. So
Yeah.
of course they're going to have completely different issues and solutions. That's like saying, sim players know how to fix RB.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
they
it
don't.
doesn't.
RB players don't know how to fix RB. So
Yeah, no, so
like, that's the thing. Like they're gonna have different points of view.
have completely different suggestions and completely different fixes, and some of them will be right, and some of them will be right about what could fix arcade, and it sounds like the worst idea in history for RB. But yeah, I think it's very important to understand there's a big old wall between the game modes, especially if you main one, and I think most people will main one or the other instead of playing, jumping between them all the time.
Yeah,
But
yeah. There's 2 points I do want to bring up that you talked about. So the BR changes, they're posted on the forums. When they happen. You didn't seem to know that. Do you check the forums a lot?
No, I don't. I see them when they're posted in my Discord, which is usually that day. But yeah, I wasn't actually aware. I jumped on the Wathana website and went, "Where's this article about BR changes?" But no, if they're up on the forums,
so
they make it to me very quickly.
Where do you generally find out what people are talking about then outside of your community?
Oh, hold on just a second. All right. Generally speaking, look, it will be when I bring it to somebody else. It will be when the wider discussion reaches me. Perhaps I watch a video from Spitfire and see what his community says about this, and watch a video from Whoopty or Defin or someone like that. When it comes into other communities, it's not a good way of doing it by any means. It only takes the view of communities from people that I watch, and they do the same when they pass around views between communities that are where the Venn diagram crosses over. But
so do you understand? Speaking, do you understand now when I say like this becomes a hive mind then, where you
it's an echo chamber.
Yeah, and I don't understand how you fix that, because well, as you've said yourself, you're kind of in it. So no, of course I'm subjective to it, but I think the way to fix that is just to increase, if there were a council, which there won't be, of course, but if there were, by making sure that you have people on both sides, making sure that you have enough people representing. Here, this is what you do, right? If you want a council, you make it independently from Gaijin. Why can't that be done?
It certainly could. Look, my main point with the idea of even suggesting it would be to make sure that they hear everything that's being debated back and forth. If you do that independently of Gaijin, you're just taking the end result. And sometimes it's important to understand how you got to that end result from the current perspective, from the current situation to the fix, and how you worked through a suggestion that needed to be revised several times. How why certain things work, why certain things don't, and all the evidence that someone presents for either side of that argument. It's
why don't you build it and then you get it enough power so people actually listen to you, and then you get trust of people, and then you present it to Gaijin, the whole build it and they will come thing.
That honestly is a very good idea, and that's what a couple of people have suggested today. And that is maybe what should happen in the future. I don't know if I'm the best person to try and start that, but I very well might do. There are a few other people interested in the exact same thing that we could work together with. And yeah, maybe that should be exactly what happens. I know that a couple of other players have done something very similar. FFG and Mystic basically, kickstarted esports ready, and it got through. It got to Gaijin. It's now a part of the game. They did very well on that regard. So maybe that's exactly what should happen.
Yeah,
I do think that is what we should do.
One thing you also talked about was Gaijin controlling the council, like from the other perspective. Like I'm guessing, like picking. Well, you said this. You said picking members of the council.
Yeah, choosing very carefully. Yeah.
Yeah. From my point of view, wouldn't well, you know what's going to happen with that, right? Like, surely. Like what's going to happen
it's going to be another echo chamber.
No. Yeah. It's not going to be that. No matter what decisions are made, you will be seen as a Gaijin puppet and therefore shouldn't be listened to. Because you have been specifically chosen by Gaijin for this. That's why there needs to be the separation.
See, what I would say in response to that is there needs to be the transparency. I would argue for transparency in that regard so that we know how much control does Gaijin have? How much of what ends up coming out of this council is, the point of Gaijin shills, as people say, or how much control, is being exercised? How much free speech do we have to actually put forth the ideas?
Well, they would have complete control because they pick the people on it. And you said at the end of the stream about a democratic system that they could set up. That's what the player council had too. So that ran into other issues when it came to like bias and things like that, with like certain squadrons voting for specific people. You're not going to be able to get away from that. So how do you fix that with getting people to actually trust you that you have their best interests in heart? Because so far through this chat with you, we've talked about several issues, and you've either said that it needs to be, malleable, or you can't represent them as a person because you don't have their experiences. So how do you gain their trust if you are chosen?
I think the way around this would be to have both Gaijin and the community have a say in who gets onto the council, and then like how much weight they so that it's not just Gaijin choosing, or it's not just the content creators being like, hey, we're in, but it's actually down to both the company and the customers choosing who represents them based on how much they trust that person. And there will be a regard of echo chamber there, because there will be plenty of people in my community that trust me and want to see me, and there will be plenty of people in your community with the exact same thing. Spits community, Spookstons, Napalms, Defins, all of that. There will be those issues, but provided it's an equal representation system, so that a bigger content creator doesn't automatically have more votes, and it's actually judged as a percentage, and do things the way that a government does things, then I think you can fairly represent who the community trusts and who Gaijin trusts, to then bring them objective mindsets without being controlled.
Well, it ain't going to be objective. It's going to be subjective, because you're subjective to your experiences, as we agreed before.
Oh yeah, no, of course. But like I said, puzzle pieces. You have 15 people putting down 15 different ideas, and eventually you end up with one set, one complete puzzle with 50 other pieces thrown out because they were not necessary or objectively wrong and weren't agreed upon. You build case, and you committee out decisions back and forth, revision after revision, and eventually come to a conclusion that will be of the most good moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I still have the issue there with the whole like consensus opinion thing then, where you come to an agreement of the best idea and then push forward with it, because then that just silences all the rest. Like I feel like in the current system we have, where we're already able to voice our own opinions. We're already able to do all of this without Gaijin. Maybe the step should be towards doing it independently through people instead of asking others to do it for us.
Yeah, I think you're right on that one. I think the final way of the final question I want to ask here is, how would you move forward from this? How would you solve the issues that you see to be issues given your experience? And what would you, like specifically, what would you set up, or what would you like to be set up? And what would be your alternative to this idea of a CC council? Just keep it the way it's going, or just take the issues as they come, or how would you move forward?
So mainly, I think the system works pretty well right now. We have, for the general community, you have forums, you have social media to be able to put through your points of view. The community managers and the game masters and everyone who transfers information, they hang out there pretty much every day, and they collect data and push it forward. When it comes to CCs, we have that, and we also have Mike and Oxy. We already have that area. And I think all three sets of those individuals have been doing great jobs at passing information.
Things have been changing for the better recently. And I think maybe it's just a case of settling into that and not looking at this with the mindset of 2 months ago, because things have changed since then. So
if I was going to change anything, what I would do is I would try and improve I would target the community managers themselves. I would ask them to put direct quotes through instead of something which is rewritten. That I would target the middleman instead of trying to remove the middleman, because I think the middleman generally does a good job, but could always be improved. That's what I would do.
Okay. So basically, make more efficient the system by which we give feedback and receive answers.
Well, make the community managers more efficient. I think the system is fine. The failures, if anybody sees any, are the humans that are involved. Because, put it like this, if let's say, in a hypothetical, in half a year's time, we're sat talking to devs, or talking to BBD, or talking to Kirill, or talking to whoever on Gaijin's side of things, their English ain't very good, and you've got a thick accent, and I sound like I'm dying. So how do we actually push through ideas when there's already going to be that block?
And there would still be translators, so there'd still be a middleman. It's very true. Very true.
So the middle needs to be improved.
And then what happened when it's only the Russian content creators, therefore, on the council who end up with that say? So very true. Very true.
Yeah, so if you need to improve anything, you improve the middleman.
Improve the middleman. Yeah, no, I'd have to agree on that. I think that's probably certainly the easiest and probably the best and most efficient takeaway. So yeah. Last thing, I know I said that was the last thing, but someone just asked if I'm too addicted to this conversation now. But if the system is working well and it just needs a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of improving the efficiency of it, why are so many people unhappy?
Because no matter what community you have in life, there is always going to be people who are happy and people who are not happy. This happens in every single gaming community, including ones that you brought up as examples, such as Wargaming, when they did have these summits, and there was already a heavily negative set of people, not just CCs, but also the general community members too. However large your community is, or however much bigger it gets, especially when it comes to War Thunder, which has been growing year on year on year, and it's once again, doing incredibly well right now. That just means
it's a very broad game.
Yeah, that just means that vocal minority is going to get louder because they're slightly bigger now. That's it, really.
Yeah, no, I would definitely say the same. I just wanted that to be a conversation that we
I think if
we end the discussion on.
Well, yeah, and as a lasting point, I think if people are unhappy with the game or finding themselves in a situation where they're highly negative about the game and what's going on, they should drop the game and move on and find something they actually enjoy.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a conversation that not enough people have. Is that nobody plays a video game forever.
That includes content creators too.
If I might just... Are you still streaming, by the way?
Yes.
So if I might ask both streams real quick, and you can let me know what your chat says in response. How many of you play War Thunder and pretty much only War Thunder?
I don't.
Like that is 90% of your gaming. You pretty much just play War Thunder. If you want to sit down and play a video game, it's War Thunder. And how many of you play something else on the side? Yeah.
I mean, speaking from my point of view, I play stuff on the side. So.
Yeah, I do too on occasion. I've got to say, War Thunder is 90% of what I do. And it looks like, judging by my messages in chat scrolling up, it is probably 70, 80% people who pretty much main War Thunder day in, day out.
I mean, it makes sense.
My community, it's War Thunder. You know, the people who are in this, I mean, of course, that's going to be, you know, an echo chamber. People who are in this discussion are clearly people who focus War Thunder more than, say, another game. Otherwise, they'd be in discussions regarding that game. But yeah, it looks like most people here either play War Thunder as pretty much their only game, or they play one, maybe two others. They're not jumping between War Thunder, League of Legends, R6 Siege, World of Tanks, World of Warships, DCS, all of them. You know, they're playing War Thunder and mostly War Thunder. So I think that creates an interesting discussion around what, you know, perhaps your move should be to not play War Thunder so much if you're unhappy, and if you are seeing problems which don't appear to be getting fixed anytime soon, maybe it is time to give it a rest.
Yeah, the gaming's supposed to be fun. So if you're not having fun, move on. And
I think the thing that people talk about is there's no real competitor. No other game. You know,
there is.
If you want
the
whole
gaming market.
Yeah, you have to play both World of Tanks, World of Warships, and World of Warplanes if you just want the three aspects that War Thunder gives in one game. But even then, it's a very different experience because it's a much more arcadey thing with HP bars, and it's, you know, infamously different. So there's no recently Gonna Heat PC looks very, very good for people who are disenfranchised with War Thunder, and perhaps that should be where a lot of people
it looks very very good to people who aren't actually following its progress. I would highlight that everybody who is interested in Gonna Heat PC, make sure to watch the Twitch live streams that they do every month or so. And it gives you like progress on what they're doing. If you think in any way that this game is going to be anything close to what War Thunder is, you are kidding yourself. So please don't.
It's probably the rose-colored glasses thing again. But there are certain people who are going to think, you know, this game gives me some of the things that I've been missing from War Thunder. From a personal experience, I started playing World of Tanks in early 2019. Honestly, it made War Thunder more fun. Because in World of Tanks, I saw a few things that I hadn't even considered that I was missing from War Thunder. It's like, the last thing I realized I needed from War Thunder was the self-propelled artillery, but then the Type 75 got added. I thought, hey, I've been playing my M7 Priest in World of Tanks, let's give this a try. And it made War Thunder more fun. So I think if you are in the mindset where this game is starting to piss you off, or it's not, the issues you see with it are not looking like they're going to be fixed, maybe try something else, even if it's just for a little while.
Yeah, there are tons of free-to-play games out there, so just give them a go.
Give them a go, yeah.
The last thing as well, at least that I want to say, is if you think that these issues are only in War Thunder, then you need to go and have a look at other gaming communities, especially as if you said like a lot of your chat only plays one game, or mainly only plays one game. Go and have a look at forums of other games. Go and have a look at what developers have said and all of these things, and you will see the exact same issues,
problems,
are brought up in those games.
Disconnect as far, all of them, they exist all across the board.
Even and there is reasons why they exist too.
Have those community contributor summits, and they still have these exact same problems. For example, to take an example, when the British light tank line was added to World of Tanks recently, and everyone said, "Oh, this is incredibly shit," and the devs were like, "No, it's not. This is, this is this, and this is this," and there's the exact same problems that happen there. And then you can replace you, me, and Steelix Wolf and Spookston and Spitfire with Circon, Jingles, and Sophalane, and all these people. You can just trade out the content creators for others having the exact same issues. So it's not isolated to War Thunder at all. We're not unique in the problems we have.
There's two last points I want to bring up because we didn't really cover them.
Yep.
So the first one, you said at the end of the stream, and I've heard you say this a few times. Free-to-play games do not rely as much on new players as you believe. They rely, when it comes to revenue generated, the vast majority is from whales. Vast
So collectors
majority.
and
Yeah, like it's
pre-order all the premiums the second they have a devlog on them.
It's something ridiculous, like up to 80 to 90% of their revenue is from whales.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah, I can send you a bunch of articles if you want.
Yeah, sure. I'll put them on the display chat on stream, or on the display capture on stream. If they're not, if they're public information, of course.
Well, yeah, of course they are. Yeah. Revenue stream, free to play.
And whilst you're doing that, your second point that you said you wanted to bring up to finish us off with.
The second point is I think it's disingenuous to say to your community that you've left a Discord when you haven't left a Discord.
Oh yeah, I did say that on the stream. Like, yes, my name is still in that channel. I can still be pinged. It's just a case of I'm no longer taking part. I'm no longer participating because my experience told me this is going nowhere. The fact that I can't show people what's being said in regard just basically means that I've decided I don't want to participate in it anymore. I know a few other content creators recently have left the Discord, actually. The reason I didn't is because, for example, we get notifications from Mike. Like, if you want to ask us for test drives in these event vehicles, ask us from this date. Ask us before that, you won't get them.
Right, and here we go.
That's the only reason I'm still on there.
So here's an article from Forbes, and it's talking about how there was a report out by Swerve, which says 0.15% of mobile players account for 50% of mobile games revenue.
Wow.
Yes, no, it's insane. Yeah, I put it in your VC chat because I can't DM you, so...
Yeah, no problem.
But yeah, I think it would be fair, like, at least making a clarification tweet or something, because I saw a lot of people the last few days, especially from that War Thunder Reddit post, where they believed you actually left the Discord. And, well, you have.
I'll do exactly that. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I know. It was a little disingenuous. I basically just wanted to clarify it very quickly and then say, okay, later, let's
I think it's
see what's
but yeah, it's kind of insane, isn't it? 0.15% of gamers, 50% of the revenue. So you can.
So this is all the people who stay around for 3 years and are just collectors. And
so you can
just wailing on the game, as they say.
So that's why I say like whales are much more important than new players.
Yeah.
New players are food for the whales.
Yeah. Yes, especially when a new low-tier premium comes out.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, goody, more dinner. But no, definitely. I think, it's an angle I definitely didn't consider. I think, though, when... how to put this? I think I would call the whales an outlier.
No.
For example, this is the experience. I mean, of course, it does make up, like you say, some 50%, but I think... You knock out the people who spend every, bit of disposable income they have on this game. You knock out the people who've been playing the game for 3 weeks and haven't recognized some of the issues that maybe some of us longer-term players have. And you see a very different perspective. But of course, that's just an assumption. They may very well not be supported.
The whales are an outlier as much as CCs are an outlier. But as we've talked about, if you want to make a council around CCs, you are fine with doing this outlier stuff. But it seems like with this conversation we've had, you've gone away from pretty much all of your ideas.
Yeah, I definitely have become, and part of it was down to your video responding to my own. And I basically said, look, this definitely is not as good as I first presented it in my little unscripted video rant about new battle ratings for the MiG-19 and such. This definitely wasn't, scripted to a fault where the idea doesn't need revising at all. It definitely does need some workaround before it's even remotely feasible, and even then it may end up having to be scrapped.
Yeah. Oh, and on the BR thing you said in the video, in the stream earlier, you said
Yep.
that the starting point is they
Is all
go
automation.
from no. Well, you said the starting point is on KDs and win rates, right?
Oh yeah, it didn't go into this oversimplified. Yeah, get it out of the way. But basically, yeah, that's this whole idea of a vehicle's efficiency.
Yeah,
and there's no statistic on efficiency. It's a culmination of a bunch of different statistics. So yeah, no, that's that was skimming over it.
I'll read you verbatim about. So I asked a Gaijin employee about this because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't being fooled. So the response was, I asked them, just want to clear something up, what are BR changes based on? Is it just KD and win rate? And they said, no, it's based on far more. Yes, I'm afraid the devs don't want to release every stat taken into account, as they don't really want people artificially gaming, cheating the system and influence BRs. But we can say it also takes into account time spent alive and active battles, earnings and proficiency, lineup composition. There is also the fact, I think, they don't just go by KD and win, and press like a spreadsheet and then boom, there's all the BR changes. There isn't an automation in there. It's all done manually.
It's all culminated from a huge amount of different sources. Yeah, no, that is very fair. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, none of this.
I'm glad that is the case. I'm glad I'm wrong about that, because it was just a case. I mean, like I've said to people in the past, it seems as if this would be very easy to game. Let's pick a new low tier Swedish vehicle that gets added that's fairly obscure, not a lot of people play it, and let's tank its stats and see if we can get it down to where it shouldn't be. Or drive around with our turrets on backwards and see just how significantly that does make a difference. And clearly, it wouldn't make nearly as much of a difference as it seems like it would, or it seemed like it would to me. So yeah, that's very good to know that that's actually not the case. Yeah, it's actually more complex than that, and a lot harder to artificially fuel the system to that. Which is obviously why, like you said, Gaijin didn't want to release every detail about it, because it would create that problem.
And yeah.
Anyway, I'm gonna have to take off there. So thank you very much for coming in and being part of this, as I said, the most convoluted stream in history. Your response to my response to your this is
stream session.
This is getting too much at this point. If you're going to continue streaming, I'll chuck my.
I'm going to turn it off, brother. I need to get.
Yeah, you're going to head off as well. All right, fair enough.
But I would like to thank you, man. Like it's been.
No, yeah, thank you as well.
It's been a good chat.
I'm very glad you didn't take this as a call out or anything. That was the last thing I wanted it to turn into.
You know me, man. Like I don't see stuff like that. It's
well, I'm a toxic Scottish motherfucker, so that's my starting point. I'm toxic by default. But no, I definitely didn't want to lose the discussion by turning it into an argument or a call out contest, a hate throwing contest. So thank you for being willing to meet me halfway here. It was very good. And I think a lot of people are going to have really enjoyed hearing both sides of this debate, and how there are a lot of very worthy disagreements that come out, and they all need to be taken into account before anything can push forward. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a good one.
See you later, man.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. Oh, I think we went through all of the issues that we talked about. There's a lot of stuff there to unpack, but he pretty much went back on everything he said before. So I don't know. I'd just like to thank Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Conte Baraka, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Hosest Kishol, Hans, Bareen, and Samuel Schlick for supporting the channel.